Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the best Quibi shows never made. Quibi was a streaming service that was much hyped about, had tons of Hollywood talent, and was headed by Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman. The whole gimmick to Quibi was that most shows or even movies would be presented in 10-minute quick bite episodes, thus the name Quibi, which is an abbreviation of Quick Bites. And they got all the top Hollywood talent to do it because Jeffrey Katzenberg first started out at Paramount, starting with the Star Trek movie franchise, then went on to the Disney Renaissance, and then made DreamWorks and Shrek and all that stuff, and then made lots of money and sold that off to Comcast, and then made Quibi. So he has a lot of power in Hollywood. And because of that, he was able to start this new streaming service with all sorts of top talent who would presumably make quick bite entertainment for his company, who raised a lot of money. Now, Quibi started on April 6th, 2020, and promptly ended on December 1st, 2020. Or I'm filming this before December 1st. I notice in most articles and press releases it says on or around December 1st. So there's actually a good chance that it's probably still maybe even going a few days after this video goes out. But realistically, Quibi is over, and although we heard of all these big projects being developed and announced and things like that, there were a fair amount of them that never went into production, but were actually announced, even in big newspapers like New York Times, The Guardian. I think Variety had articles where it was like all the top talent who are working on shows for Quibi, which were actually usually the same article as the New York Times one, which is why most people source that. But still, there is a long list of projects, and there were a lot of them that didn't get made, and that's what this video is about. It's sort of interesting. I don't hate Quibi. I had a fun enough time in the kind of 90-day free window. I like Reno 911. Golden Arm was kind of cheesy, Sam Raimi fun. There was some interesting stuff to it. I didn't get to see everything I wanted to, and I didn't re-sign up past the 90-day thing. And I think if it were free, we probably would actually still be talking about it, but there's no way I'm paying for that crap. So basically, it failed because as free streaming services are actually doing a lot better, they chose to not do that. So yes, even though they did have a lot of top talent, they did pass on Mr. Beast, but they did at least develop these various projects. Now, a lot of them, because these were things that were in development and to my understanding never shot any of these, there's not really a lot of photos and video of any of this stuff. So I will try to have pictures of the people involved, and if I got a picture of them through Googling their name and the word Quibi, and I could get them in front of a Quibi logo, like a real picture, then I will absolutely include it. Don't worry. That will absolutely be in the video. There's no way that will not be in the video. Anyway, if you've heard Quibi announcements, there's a lot of them that sort of just sound like someone just sort of spitballing and making a bunch of crap up. And maybe that's not necessarily true. Maybe it's just how it's presented. But the first one I'm going to talk about today was this thing called Aftermath from Guillermo del Toro. And I want to specify that this wasn't the New York Times, it was in various places, but it's basically like no one knows what Aftermath would have been. I know del Toro always has a lot of things in development, so you're probably like, oh, maybe he didn't get to spend enough time on it. I would agree with that. Basically, this is the quote from the New York Times. It says, "The Oscar-winning director was creating a modern vampire film, working title Aftermath. Then Quibi said it was about zombies. Either way, it's about the undead, del Toro's speciality." So no one really knows what this is, and I looked it up a couple times and I couldn't find anything beyond it was this one thing and now it's this other thing maybe, and that's a real thing. So I don't know what Aftermath would have been, but I find that actually really interesting. that was a real project.
Only on Quibi.
The next one, a Legends of the Hidden Temple reboot. Now, Viacom and Quibi sort of had an interesting relationship with rebooting various sort of game shows and shows like that. They rebooted Singled Out on Quibi and actually Punk'd. I didn't watch Punk'd, but I did watch one episode of Singled Out, and it felt like you were watching a classic game show on speed, and they cut things out, and it just like gave me a panic attack with how fast it was moving. It was like not chill like most game shows. But this Hidden Temple reboot actually got a little farther along. There was a casting call in about March. It was originally supposed to be a launch title for Quibi. That did not obviously happen. But this reboot is different. It's not trying to update for the kids of today. It's trying to appeal to the fans of the original Legends of the Hidden Temple, and really leaning into that. It was going to be a Survivor-like makeover of the original Legends of the Hidden Temple, and it was going to be obviously aimed at adults or super fans who would then compete in trivia show and, you know, the classic kind of temple games. They were going to be set in a real-life jungle rather than a set, and it would be appeal to grown-up audiences with scaled-up challenges and bigger prizes, presumably, which is kind of a really crazy reboot of Legends of the Hidden Temple. But yeah, they did have a casting call in March. I haven't heard much of what's happened to the Legends of the Hidden Temple reboot after this. But yes, that was the plan, was to update Legends of the Hidden Temple for, you know, grown-ups who grew up with it and make it even crazier. The next thing is a project from Justin Roiland, co-creator of Rick and Morty. It was called Gloop World. Apparently he had been developing it for about 7 years, which some projects on Quibi sounded like they were really always trying to get these things made, and Quibi was actually just the person who finally said yes, and they just went with it. And that is definitely the case in Gloop World, because you'd think with someone like a co-creator of Rick and Morty could make like any show he wanted anywhere, and I guess he chose Quibi, I don't know. But this would have been a kind of a stop motion animation show, which there were a couple, and it would have been done by Stupid Buddy Studios, who also does Robot Chicken. It would have been about two anthropomorphic blobs named Bob, Rundy, and Fuzzy. It would follow their weird adventures through a clay-mated suburbia. The pair would be very malleable. It sounded sort of like a weird show, and I'm a little surprised. When I first heard he had a show on here, I just assumed like, oh, he just pitched it because everyone was doing it, but it sounds like this was a real passion project. Here's a quote from Justin Roiland about Gloop World. Gloop World has been a dream of mine to make for almost 7 years, a tactile clay animation show with a mysterious, weird, and expansive world and really fun characters, fingerprints and all. I could have done this without the folks at Stupid Buddy Studios, who understood exactly what I meant when I wanted the claymation to have an imperfect approach where you can see the animators in the work. I want the Gloop characters to feel like you can reach into your phone and grab them yourself. Can't wait to share this weird, silly show with the world. It sounds like very much like, and I heard in other places mentioned Gumby, like very malleable. You can see the animator's fingerprints, you can see that they did things on it. And I like that Justin Roiland kind of is like playing with claymation a little more. It feels like this would have been a little more surreal had it happened, but I have heard really nothing from it. I hope actually this one, out of the ones I've announced, gets picked up by a different streaming service. Next up is a show that would have been called Rapper Warrior Ninja. It is a show that is developed by Eric Andre. All I could find on this was what I found in the New York Times article that just listed all the famous people who were making things for Quibi, and this was Eric Andre's. He said it would be expanding on his Adult Swim talk show, but the basic logline of Rapper Ninja Warrior was where rappers would have to overcome weird obstacles while freestyling. That's it. I would definitely watch a YouTube series on that. I don't know if I'd pay for Quibi for it, but that sounds at least bizarre enough of a basic concept. Like if you had someone who's really good at freestyling and then they had to like continuously freestyle while all these crazy things are going on. That actually sounds kind of fun to me. So that was Erica. I just like that concept. I don't really have much more with that one. The next one is another animated one. You probably heard about this one because this was probably a more high profile one, and it was going to have Ryan Reynolds, called Father Mukka, which was going to star Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson, and it would have been animated. It would have been about a minor mishap causes Samuel L. Jackson's character to become Ryan Reynolds' primary caregiver. Shit gets weird. Ryan is delighted to spend all of his time with Samuel L. Jackson. It doesn't say what the mishap is or what their characters are, other than like Ryan Reynolds and Sam Jackson. Apparently a maximum effort with Titmouse were going to be involved as the animation studio. We really don't know much about this, but one of the animated projects that they were really considering was this one with Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson. Who knows what that would have been? I don't know if there's that many fans of The Hitman's Bodyguard, and that probably sounds better than it actually is, but that was something that they were considering. Another one, and this is the only show I know of that had a first season somewhere else, and then was going to have its second season on Quibi. I know that Reno 911 came back on Quibi, but this, and several shows were rebooted and things like that and came back on Quibi. But this is the only one I'm aware of that had a first season somewhere else and then directly went to Quibi. And I might say this wrong, and I apologize. The Alternatino with Arturo Castro. Even though it did air on Comedy Central originally, it had been picked up for a second season on Quibi, which I didn't know actually until recently. I found that kind of interesting if Quibi had continued. So this next one I gotta say is fucking nuts. And of all these, I had not heard of this until I researched this video, and I just find it, holy crap. It's called Ton Chum, and it is hosted by Michelle Rodriguez of Fast and Furious and Avatar and other stuff. I'm just gonna go over this because, yeah, I don't know how safe this would be, but it is a real premise to a show that supposedly would have been real. I think it's probably best for anyone involved that this did not happen. In a true first of its kind scientific endeavor, the mobile streaming platform is engineering the largest controlled feeding frenzy the ocean has ever seen by dropping 10-ton, that's 20,000 pounds, ball of shark chum into open waters. You think that's bad? There's more. Uniquely, the bait ball will be constructed around a protective shark cage, allowing divers to immerse with the gathering storm of sharks and other apex marine predators, which would include giant squid or sperm whales as it descends into the depths. Oh, so this thing's going to go further down. Wow. Okay, and to further explain what this to me sounds like they came up with the craziest premise, and Quibi was like, great, and they're like, wait, what? Michelle Rodriguez will lead the charge, driving down inside the bait ball and witness one of nature's most spectacular events. A vast variety of species will be attracted from miles around, and she will observe how they interact at surface level at 100 feet down, and even how behaviors change in the dark of night. Equipped with an array of deep water cameras, the bait ball will then detach from the protective cage, oh my god, and continue its plunge thousands of feet to the ocean floor to capture imagery of the mysterious creatures that lurk below. Oh my god, really? I didn't even really think about that till I read it now. So basically, there'll be this ball of shark chum, like stuff that sharks would attack, and in the middle of it, like a wonder ball, would be a human, and then they're gonna keep letting that thing go down while sharks attack it. So that sounds horrible, and would I watch it if it was real? Yes. Would I feel bad about it? Probably. I don't think you could do that in a Quibi, man. I just don't. Wow, I just got anxiety reading that. Just 10-ton chum. Man, remind me never to fuck with Michelle Rodriguez, because that's like a funny show she made. I mean, that's scary. That sounds like the greatest horror concept I've ever heard. I wouldn't even want to be on that boat. The people going to be in the chum. I'm not into being in chum. Anyway, let's move on. The next one is called Immoral Compass, which could have been the last one. But Immoral Compass is based on Tyler Fabio's digital short. I guess Immoral Compass is described as sort of an outrageous psychological thriller, exploring how far normal people will go to get what they desire, but with unpredictable and inevitable consequences following as the story unfolds. This would have been written, directed, starring, and executive produced by Bill Burr. I find this concept sort of interesting when you think about Bill Burr in it. Sounds actually sort of like an interesting idea for a show, to be honest with you. I think it could get actually extremely dark knowing that premise. I do not know the digital short. Should I have looked them up? Sure. But the idea of that premise with Bill Burr sounds enticing to me. The next one, Transmissions. This would have been from the creator of The Bodyguard, Jed Merchero. This is not the Whitney Houston one, but the one on the BBC and stuff. It is a show that is set at a remote radio observatory where a lone scientist begins receiving eerie signals from deep space. That actually sounds cool. That sounds kind of cool to me. That has a cool gothic kind of cool vibe. I'm into that. The next one is one that is more presented, if you find anything about it, as something from Laura Dern, but it's really, she's just a producer on it, to my understanding. I think she might have starred in an episode, but it was called Just One Drink. It is going to be about a bartender and the customers she serves, all of whom are in various states of emotional despair. So it'd be Nick Hornsby, and that sounds like actually an interesting concept, Just One Drink. That actually sounds like that could be a cool vignette thing. It's just seeing, a bartender having, various little quick Quibbies, I guess, quick little short films of them with various customers at the bar. You could do one season at one bar, another season at another bar, things like that. That actually sounds like actually a pretty cool idea to me. So, okay, the next one, Biggest Little Cookoff. This is from Andy Samberg, and I honestly think, knowing Andy Samberg and The Lonely Island, this very much feels like a show he made up as a joke, but I also would believe he would make this show. So I don't know. But basically it was about Andy Samberg would star in it, and I like the concept of this is most cooking shows you have to make a dish. This is not that. You have to make a single, you have to create the most mouth-watering meals in a single bite. So the challenge would be the chefs to make meals such as spaghetti and meatballs on a plate the size of a dime, or sushi on a single grain of rice. It's a real concept. What was his line? He had a good line. This was Samberg's quote on this show. He says, "Anyone who knows me knows I love dinky stuff. So when this show about dinky food came my way, I said, I like the dinky food. I'm excited to bring my expertise to dinky things to the dinky cooking arena. I'm also excited to bring a big bag lunch because the food is so dinky, I'm for sure going to still be hungry after the shows." So, Big Little Cookoff was a real show. This is the last one of the best Quibi shows never made. This was called Spielberg's After Dark. It was going to be sort of a kind of a darker horror show presented from Steven Spielberg, and he was actually writing it, which is something he rarely ever does. He doesn't usually write his own stuff. He's only written of the movies he's directed, AI and Close Encounters, and literally nothing between those. He has other people write those. He's had storyboard credits on other things, but literally it's Close Encounters, AI, that's it. So this was actually a rarity, and it would have been kind of a spookier horror show. And the kind of twist to this show and Spielberg's After Dark is that you could only watch it on the app when it was dark. So somehow the Quibi team, and I looked this up because I'd heard about this idea, the show would only be available after sunset, but according to one quote I found, it said Quibi's engineering team came up with a new way to deliver each episode using the internal clock on a subscriber's phone. Quibi could tell the sun is about to set. A clock will appear in the app, according to Variety, that will count down until the moment the sun disappears, which is insane. The episode will be available to watch only then. The series will then disappear from the app. This is the idea, until the next night. Think of it as appointment television, but with a new technological twist. Supposedly, according to Katzenberg, I want to preface this, Spielberg never gave a quote on this, so I don't know how real it is, but they are friends. They do know each other fairly well, so I don't think it's that crazy, but Spielberg literally never said anything. But, so there's that also. But according to Katzenberg, he said Spielberg has written 5 or 6 episodes of a 10 to 12 episode story. The program was still under development as Spielberg's After Dark, so maybe it would have been something else. But it's kind of interesting. I'm actually sort of curious what this would have been, and I like the idea that they had this kind of special at night show or something that you couldn't watch during the day is a little cool. I like that Spielberg was well, I'll do it, but I need all this cool stuff, and they were yeah, we'll figure it out, and that they supposedly did. We don't actually know if they did because they never did it, but supposedly they knew how to do this. So Spielberg's After Dark, I think, is still probably the one. I didn't really rank these, but if I were, this is the one that I thought would have been cool to see a Steven Spielberg written horror anthology show that could only show up at night. Sounds very enticing. All right, so those were the best Quibi shows never made. I tried to include the ones I was interested in. If there's one that you would be interested in, or any Quibi stuff that or your experience with Quibi you want to talk about in the comments below, please do. There's probably a lot. There's so many Quibi things that I'm sure I missed a few that were probably really fascinating. So please share them away. These are just the ones that I could find. I researched a bunch that I didn't even use because there are way too many things that were potentially going to go to Quibi. RIP Quibi. It was nice to know you, I guess, for the free trial period, and now you're gone. And I think Quibi was probably the most 2020 thing of all, because it was, started with such promise and kind of just ended with a lot of failure. And yeah. Anyway, let me know what you thought of these projects, and seriously, what your favorite moment of Quibi, or the best never made Quibi show that you ever heard of, and subscribe if you would like to.